What if one of the biggest rock bands in history had been hiding a dark secret right out in the open? According to one of music's wildest conspiracy theories, Paul McCartney died in 1966 and the Beatles covered it up by replacing him with a lookalike. Dubbed the Paul is dead theory, this bizarre rumour exploded in 1969 thanks to supposed clues buried in songs, album covers and even backmasked lyrics. It's been debunked, but the mystery still haunts Beatles lore. Can it all just be a coincidence? Let's dive into the myth, the clues, and why it still captivates fans today. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Paul is dead conspiracy theory, one of the most persistent and bizarre myths in pop culture, originated from scattered rumours that eventually snowballed into global headlines. The Paul is dead theory is commonly thought to have really taken root in October of 1969 and thus entered the mass consciousness when an American college student called into a Detroit radio station and claimed that Paul had died in a car crash in November of 1966. According to this version of events, the Beatles, not wanting to upset fans or the British public, decided to cover up the death and replace Paul with a doppelganger named William Shears Campbell, or sometimes Billy Shears, after a lookalike contest. What lookalike contest? Well, one of the strangest and most persistent elements of the Paul is dead theory is the claim that after Paul McCartney supposedly died in a 1966 car crash, the Beatles held a secret lookalike contest in Scotland to find his replacement. According to the myth, the winner was a man named William Campbell, sometimes referred to as William Shears Campbell, Canadian or a Scotsman, depending on the version. He was allegedly chosen because of his uncanny resemblance to Paul and underwent minor plastic surgery in order to complete the illusion.
You do a fantastic Paul McCartney.
But the whole story actually goes back even further than 1969 and that radio call. You see, whispers about Paul McCartney's health began as early as 1966. In September of that year, Fleet Street journalists began calling Beatles press officer Tony Barrow, seeking confirmation of rumours that McCartney was dead or seriously ill. Barrow dismissed the speculation, saying he had recently spoken to Paul and that he was fine. Later in 1966, the rumour faded into the background, overtaken by speculation that the Beatles were breaking up, especially after their sudden disappearance from public appearances and the cancellation of scheduled tour dates. However, by early 1967, the story took a darker turn. New rumours surfaced in London that Paul McCartney had died in a traffic accident on the M1 motorway on the 7th of January 1967. This was publicly denied in the Beatles book Fan magazine the following month. Paul himself lightly referenced the rumour in a press conference for Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band in May. Meanwhile, stories of Beatles lookalikes began circulating. Beatles producer George Martin once said that decoys had been used to help the real band members evade the big crowds. Similarly, journalist Maureen O'Grady reported in Rave magazine that such tactics were used during their 1964 US tour. These decoy stories, along with claims that lookalikes had performed on stage, helped lay the groundwork for the idea that McCartney had been replaced. Both Paul and George publicly denied these accusations. By late 1967, the rumour had evolved into a full-blown conspiracy that McCartney had died and been secretly replaced by a lookalike named William Campbell. Some claimed that this switch was confirmed at Paul's own engagement party, where guests quietly admitted he'd been replaced. By 1968, fans were already analysing Beatles songs for hidden meanings. On 17th of September 1969, the theory went public when Tim Harper published an article titled "Is Beatle Paul McCartney Dead?" in the Drake Times Delphi, the student paper of Drake University in Iowa. In October of 1969, the Beatles, on the verge of breakup and Abbey Road now just released, well, the rumour hit the international media. Beatles press officer Derek Taylor was flooded with calls. Meanwhile, Paul had retreated to his Scottish farm with his wife and children, preferring to stay quiet amid the media circus. But his silence only fueled the fire. And when he resurfaced, very much alive, the legend was already out of control. But there is some truth to these car crash rumours. It's such a specific way for Paul to have died for there not to be just a little bit of truth sprinkled in there. In the heart of London's swinging 60s, art dealer Robert Frazier was a central figure in the celebrity scene with close ties to the Beatles, especially Paul McCartney. In early 1967, Fraser and his Moroccan assistant Mohamed Chabi went to a party at McCartney's house. There, McCartney revealed a stash of various drugs hidden inside a hollowed-out book and tasked Chabi with rolling joints. Later, Fraser, McCartney and several Rolling Stones, including Mick Jagger and Keith Richards, planned a weekend getaway to Keith Richards' country house. As they departed, McCartney handed the stash-filled book to Chabi and instructed him to follow in his custom Mini Cooper while Paul went in Jagger's car. Despite being high and unfamiliar with the roads, Chabi tried to keep up with Jagger's car on the dark, narrow country roads. During the trip, a loose seatbelt dragging from McCartney's Mini got run over by a passing car, pulling the vehicle off course. He lost control and crashed violently into a streetlight. Miraculously though, he survived. Realising the risk of police discovering the drug-filled box in McCartney's car, Chabi, bloodied and injured, crawled from the wreck, found the stash and threw it into a ravine before authorities arrived. Onlookers recognised McCartney's famous Mini and seeing a dark-haired man pulled from the wreck, mistakenly assumed that it was Paul who had crashed, and rumours spread quickly. Chabi, after recovering at a hospital, received no calls from McCartney or his circle. When they finally contacted him, it was to accuse him of disappearing with the drugs. McCartney refused to help with the medical expenses, claiming the car was only insured for himself and his family. So there was a car crash after all. Anyway, fans began poring over Beatles lyrics, album art, recordings, and trying to discover clues that they interpreted as admissions or hints left by the band, who included them just to try and get over the guilt of what they'd done, covered up Paul's death and replaced him like nothing had happened. Here's a few that I think are interesting. Perhaps the most iconic clue is the cover of Abbey Road. Fans claimed it was a symbolic funeral procession. John Lennon in white represents a preacher. Ringo Starr in black is the Undertaker. Paul McCartney is barefoot and out of step with the others, supposedly symbolising a corpse. He's also holding a cigarette in his right hand, even though Paul is left-handed. George Harrison in denim represents the gravedigger. The Volkswagen Beetle in the background has a license plate reading 28 if, interpreted to mean that if Paul would have been 28 if he were alive. And it's not just the Abbey Road picture that gives us clues too. The Sgt. Pepper album is often cited as a public funeral for the real Paul. The cover shows the Beatles surrounded by flowers and mourners, many of whom are historical figures who are now dead. A bass guitar made of flowers lies at the front, shaped like a left-handed instrument. Paul was left-handed. On the back cover, Paul is the only Beatle facing away from the camera. The inner sleeve shows Paul with a patch on his left arm reading OPD, which fans interpreted as officially pronounced dead. And George points to a lyric in the song She's Leaving, Wednesday morning at 5 o'clock. The alleged time of the crash. And that's not just all. In the I Am the Walrus sequence, John sings I Am the Walrus, which fans believe linked Paul to the dead walrus in The Walrus and the Carpenter. On the album cover of Magical Mystery Tour, Paul is dressed in a black walrus suit, another sign he was the dead one. And in the song Strawberry Fields Forever, at the end of the track, John seems to mutter, I buried Paul. In Revolution 9, when played backwards, the phrase, turn me on dead man, can supposedly be heard. In the song I'm So Tired, when reversed, allegedly John reveals saying Paul is dead man, miss him, miss him. In Glass Onion, Lennon sings, here's another clue for you all, the walrus was Paul, fueling further speculation. And on the Let It Be cover, Paul is the only Beatle framed with a red background, while the others are against white. Some interpreted this as a symbol of blood, danger, or even death. And we can't forget, A Day in the Life has the line he blew his mind out in a car, which fans linked to the alleged fatal car crash. And in Lady Madonna, some heard the phrase, Wednesday morning papers didn't come, believed again to reference Wednesday, the day that he died. God, that's a lot, isn't it? Well, that's still true, right? It can't be just a coincidence. Well, about that. But anyway, before we start, what did Paul or Billy Shears have to say about this? Paul McCartney himself addressed the rumour in Life magazine in 1969, saying, Rumours of my death have been greatly exaggerated. If I was dead, I'm sure I'd be the last to know. He joked about the theory in later years and even titled a 1993 live album Paul is Live as a tongue-in-cheek rebuttal. Some journalists had even gone up to his fan to question him, which Paul wasn't happy about. Realising he looked a little bit, well, not great in these pictures, he invited them back for a proper interview in exchange for the photos they took of him. And about these so-called clues. Well, the Beatles chose famous personalities they admired for the cover, not mourners. The floral bass guitar is a nod to Paul's instrument, not his gravestone. The left-handed bass guitar, well, Paul was left-handed, so the floral bass reflects that. It's not a clue, it's just accurate design. Paul says the reason he wasn't wearing shoes that day was because he turned up to the photo shoot in sandals, it was a hot day, and they didn't look right on the album cover. And Paul would have been 27, not 28. Billy Shears was Ringo's character in Sgt. Pepper's, not Paul's. That's why Ringo starts singing the next song seamlessly. Paul facing away on the back cover, well, this was an artistic choice by the photographer, not a hidden message. Random positioning doesn't mean death. The OPD patch on Paul's sleeve. Fans said it meant officially pronounced dead, but the patch actually says OPP, for Ontario Provincial Police, a souvenir from a visit to Canada. And George pointing to Wednesday morning. Just a coincidence. Fans linked the walrus to death through Lewis Carroll's poem, but Lennon later said the walrus was just a surreal image, and in fact, he was the walrus, not Paul. Paul in the black walrus suit. Well, the Beatles just wore animal costumes for fun. The choice of who wore what was random, not symbolic. I buried Paul in strawberry fields forever. John confirmed he was actually saying cranberry sauce, and studio outtakes backed that up. There's no buried message. Revolution 9 backwards says, "Turn me on, dead man." Backmasking is real, but this just sounds a bit like a stretch to me. The reversed audio is distorted and open to interpretation. I'm so tired reverse says, "Paul is dead man, miss him, miss him." Again, it only sounds like that if you're looking for it. It's just coincidental audio noise. The walrus was Paul in Glass Onion. John added this line on purpose to mock fans who were reading too much into the clues, and he felt that too many of his songs were about Yoko. Paul framed in red. Red was used simply for contrast, not to suggest blood or death. Colours were chosen for visual appeal, not symbolism. He blew his mind out in a car in A Day in the Life. This line was based on Tara Brown, the heir to the Guinness fortune, who actually died in a crash, not Paul. Wednesday morning papers didn't come in Lady Madonna. There's no such lyric. Fans misheard or misinterpreted a vocal line. It doesn't exist in the official lyrics. At the height of Beatlemania, the Beatles weren't just musicians, they were mythical figures. Their sudden retreat from touring, combined with increasingly abstract lyrics, cryptic album artwork, created fertile ground for media skepticism and fan deep diving. The Paul is dead phenomenon became a worldwide scavenger hunt. It foreshadowed the internet age, where conspiracy theories on fragmenting information thrived, and the idea that anyone can play detective. It's even said that the Beatles' record label, Capitol, helped spread the rumour as it helped improve album sales. Fans were overbuying Beatles records as they were ruining them by playing songs backwards and doggedly trying to find clues in the album sleeves. Despite this, no one from Capitol Records ever came forward to take the blame, and you'd think someone would want to after all these years. The Paul is dead theory was never really about truth. People find what they want to find. It's just simple confirmation bias. They're not clues. Well, at least I don't think so. They're just nitpicked similarities. I think it's amazing how many so-called clues fans have actually found over the years. It makes it all just so much more fascinating and interesting. I could be here all day in this video showing more, but I just wanted to show you some of my favourites and some of the main ones that are on the internet. While it's now accepted as a hoax, the clues live on as part of the Beatles' enduring mystique. If there's anything to take from this, the Paul is dead theory just shows how deeply people engage back then with music and imagery. I couldn't imagine anything like this taking hold with fans today, even with the internet to fan the flames. What a shame. Oh, and rest in peace, Paul. Thanks for watching as always, guys. Before I go, you might have noticed the t-shirt I'm wearing. Well, that's from Cult Hero. They're not a sponsor, they're just my brother's business, and they've got a great collection of rock and roll t-shirts and hoodies celebrating some of the most iconic gigs and performances of all time. Use R&R Archive for 15% off. The link is in the bio. And if you love the videos that I do, keep watching. I've got plenty now. Try this one on the anthem that John Lennon wrote from his bed. Do you think you know what song I'm on about? And I'll see you in the next one.